So when I go birding, I usually start after getting dressed, which in the summertime isn't a big deal, but in the winter it is. So actually I turn on my weather radio, see what the forecast, if it's changed or not, and what the current conditions are. Like I noticed that today was supposed to be in the lower 20s, but it was actually in the lower 30s for a start. So that makes a big difference as far as my toes go. You need a lot. I don't know. As far as circulation goes, my fingers and toes. So I'm wearing actually gloves that are a little bit lighter, and my toes were okay last time when it was a lot colder. So I figured I won't have it. Definitely won't have any problem. They got a little cold. You know, after being out for about an hour, but then it warmed up a little bit, and they seemed to be okay. It hurt a little bit, but at any rate, okay. So after I get everything together, I go out. I usually take the Orange Bus, which stops out on Dean Street near Shamblin, a place they call Shamblin. There's a bunch of apartments there, and I take that to the Red Bus, and I take the Red Bus to the mall, and then I walk from the mall to the Zion Road entrance to Lake Fayetteville Park. And I recently got, it was not too recent anymore. It was probably in late August or in September that somebody mistook my tripod with the telescope on it for a rifle and called the police, and the police went over there and they talked to me for a while. They were very nice. I mean, so it doesn't always go that way. A lot of times, because I'm carrying binoculars and stuff, people think I'm a peeping Tom, and the police get pretty excited about that. They treat me like I've done something wrong, that they knew. No, I'd done something wrong. But anyway, this time it was fine, and it got picked up as a news report by the Democrat Gazette. And now when I go out to Lake Fayetteville, you know, very often people ask me, am I the guy who was in the newspaper article? So I tell them, yes, I am. But anyway, so I go over to the Zion Road entrance, and then I walk north there to the Veterans Park, and then west across the spillway area where there's a bridge. I usually check for birds below the spillway. Sometimes there's things foraging out on the rocks or hanging around. It's a good place for insects, especially in wintertime. It's a good place to check because there's not too many places that birds can find insects readily available. So anyway, I check there, and actually we speak of insects. I don't know if this bird was eating insects, but this species called Louisiana water thrush has almost never been thoroughly documented north of, outside of, say, some areas in Southern California and north of South Texas and up the coast a little ways, the Gulf Coast and up the Atlantic coast a little ways. Hasn't been documented really in the interior in the wintertime. This bird called a Louisiana water thrush. I saw it was reported there by David Chapman, who used to live out by Lake Fayetteville during a previous year, and then I saw one another year, but this the third time's the charm, I guess. I saw it, and I called up Joe Neal, and he came out there and he photographed it. We got great photos, and actually other people even photographed it. So this is pretty solid evidence that this species. This was January 22nd or something, middle of winter. So that was a pretty significant record. And Louisiana looks a lot like a northern water thrush, so that's what people think that people are reporting. There are other reports that they're actually seeing a northern, but they're calling it a Louisiana. It's not always easy to tell apart, but we get good photos. You can tell it's there's a lot of subtle differences. So if you get a good photo, though, you can tell for sure. So at any rate, so over the spillway, there's the levee, and I think as some of you know, I go below the levee there and check the weedy area that often has a lot of birds in it. And I continue west to where the bait shop is. Sometimes I stop in there. That area has a lot of pines. It has birds that are attracted to pines, and a lot of times I just walk outside the gate. Depends exactly what I think things are going to be like. If there's a lot of water birds, I'm eager to move on down the. I guess I'm going east, east along the lake shore. So I walk along the lake shore to the environmental center. There's a little platform that sticks out in the water out there. I walk out on that, and there's very often a concentration of water birds, mainly ducks out there. Sometimes some other birds such as coots and pied-billed grebes, and sometimes other water birds that swim in the water. And after that. There's a trail goes along it's a relatively narrow trail along the rocky shore of the lake. It goes east to the east end of the lake, and I walk down there. I sort of make a loop and return on a trail that used to be bordering mature forest with a field, but the field's grown up, and now it's not always that easy to distinguish one spot from the other. But you can, if you look at it, you can tell the trees are shorter on one side. And so just return going west, and then often I follow the bike trail west. By then I'm pretty tired, ready to go home, so I don't always make too many stops. I definitely take less time going back west and back to the mall and catch the bus. Well, before I catch the bus, this is new for me starting this last year, is that I've been going to McDonald's afterward and get coffee, which since I'm a senior I get for unlimited amount for 88 cents, and water. Probably more importantly, water, because I'm dehydrated by the end of the day. And then I catch the bus. Or sometimes I even stop at Walmart and buy something. But, I'm carrying a telescope and stuff. I don't buy very much. A lot of times bananas, because I'm constantly running out of them. I eat a lot of bananas, and of course they don't keep too long. So then I go home. And another thing that I've been doing only lately is sort of having a blog. I've noticed that I've heard that people are interested in what I'm seeing, so I just a lot of times I just get on the computer and email, I don't know, about a dozen or so people about the birds that I saw. I try. There's different people have slightly different interests. Like one of the people who's the head of the Fayetteville schools at the Environmental Center. The Environmental Center, for people who don't know, takes elementary and high school, I think, elementary and high school kids out and introduces them to nature, outside nature, not just from indoors. So they go out, they measure, things about the water, chemical and physical properties. Like the turbidity, how many particles are in, would be a physical property, but a chemical property would be the biochemical oxygen demand. It measures how eutrophic it might be, how polluted, in a sense. But at any rate, the person out there, Dana Smith, she's generally interested in what birds are around. I guess it seems like particularly the birds on the water, because they go out there and they see the more conspicuous things. So I'm sure to put in, what water birds I see around there, and I usually have some statement about land birds, at least general statement, what's common, what isn't. how things are changing. So she's not an experienced birder, but she, for one thing, I mean, she tries to teach, her students about it, and so, everybody does the best that they can. I certainly, you get away from birds, I don't know too much about nature, really. But at any rate, so I include that. There's, I send stuff to the marina in case there's any birders that might inquire. The people who run that don't know anything about birds. They're actually, there's like, I think 3 PhDs, 2 are psychologists, and one is, I think, in, what do you call that? Not sports medicine, but kinesiology, I think. And there's also a guy who's a chemical engineer. I think he has a PhD as well. And their parent, well, one of their parents, I think, is a psychology degree, and the other one, I'm not sure exactly what he does. But at any rate, so there's like 6 people. There's the 2 kids and their spouses and the 2 parents, and they run the place. So, but they're mainly interested in bikes and fishing. So sometimes I stop there. I've got coffee there. I sometimes get water there as well. Another place to get water. And
what's this place called?
It's, I think, the Lake Fayetteville Marina, but it's a bait shop. It's a bait shop at the marina. So the other people are birders who are interested in this blog. So if I see something rare, like the last time I was out there, I saw this bird called a black and white warbler. Since it was December 8th, it was just 2 days ago that I saw it. It was very, very unusual. It's very unusual in winter anywhere in Arkansas, but for this part of the state, it's the first time it's ever been reported. So in winter, it's common. It's common in the summertime. So throughout a large part of the state in the summertime. So
You talked about internet and posting information. Do you do this from home, or do you?
No, I don't have a computer. I have I'm considered an affiliate at the university, so I have an ID, and in between buses, sort of, I try and do it quickly. A lot of times I leave out stuff that, I said, oh gee, how can I leave that out? Like around the marina, I figure that if people inquire at the marina, they might be more interested in what's around the immediate area there, what you can see. And also it's distinctive in that it's got the best pines. It attracts bird species such as, this year we got an invasion of them, red-breasted nuthatches. It's a good place to look for that. A lot of times it's pine warblers. It has kinglets, which are birds that are very often associated with pines. There's some other things. I mean, we had a year we had crossbills. I'm not sure if I saw crossbills there or not. But, I only saw some in Lake Fayetteville, but I think I saw some. Other people had it. Anyway, even if I didn't, they were reported from there at times. So in winter, pines are usually they have more bird species, a greater variety of bird species than your arbitrary area. But in winter, I mean, residential areas are very good. Like this stuff out here, you might take a picture of it. This cane, I suspect is the reason that I see several birds around here. Last year, I saw winter wren. Ruby crown kinglets, more than one, an orange crown warbler, yellow rumped warbler, various other things. So because it provides cover, it protects against high wind, and it's also good against predators. And probably if the birds eat insects, there's probably some insects on the bark of this stuff or in the leaves. It's still green. You can see it's green. So.
I'm sorry. Can you just a minute?
Sure.
Can you say that last part again, but wait just a minute?
I'll wait. So, well, how do you call them? Roll them?
Okay. Can you say that last part one more time?
Yeah, this cane, I suspect, is a reason that I get, is one reason that I get a lot of birds here that maybe don't get at other places. The ruby crown kinglets and orange crown warblers, I think, roost in it. And also last year there might be one this year, but some of these birds are pretty secretive, and they like to hide in here. A winter wren was here last winter. And there was a few other things, yellow-rumped warbler, but a lot of them are also here because this is an area that has pines basically from Dean Street all the way to, what's the name of that, Lawson, I think. So, and the area around the Asbel School is particularly good. I found last winter, this is actually the anniversary. This is the 1-year anniversary. A bird called a Cape May warbler, another species that doesn't normally winter here. But I was just checking it out because Christmas count was coming up, and I was wondering if I might find pine warblers. And so I did something. You want me to demonstrate this? John, I forgot his name. I'm getting old, John. I'm sorry. I do this little, I make noises that sometimes attract birds. One of them is it's called spishing. It's like making this noise. And if you do that, a lot of times the birds become curious, and they might, come out of there and take a little look at you. A lot of times they pop right back in, but sometimes you get lucky and they sit outside. And the other noise is called squeaking. I'm not sure I can do it. I need my lips wet. They tend to dry up in this weather. You sort of just move your lips together so that you get a little moisture, water between there, and when you inhale, it makes squeaking noise. And that, if you make that loud, that works even better usually than the spishing.
So how up close and personal do you get with birds? Like how close have
Well,
you
I'll tell you, this day that I found this Cape May warbler, I was going to the bank. I didn't have binoculars or anything, but I thought that maybe pine warblers, at least the adult males, have bright yellow underparts, and they're slightly bigger than there's usually kinglets in with pines, or very often. I figured I probably could tell that it was a pine warbler, or maybe I'd get close enough. Well, they came into a bush that was like maybe 10 feet away, something like 6 feet up, and there was like 4 species that came in there. One was a ruby crown kinglet, one was a chickadee, one was a pine warbler, but the other one was a Cape May warbler. And really, I mean, to not have binoculars, and not only could I tell that it was a Cape May warbler, but I could tell more or less what plumage it was in. So that could be another talk as to what plumage is. But birds, can differ in how in their appearance based on their sex and their age. If they're, for small birds, if they're under a year, they usually look different than the birds that are adults, and very often, if they're males or females, they look different. So this Cape May warbler was either an adult female or a first-year male. They look fairly similar, but at any rate, just to be able to identify it, it's a rare bird. I don't know, unless I really got a good look at it, I wouldn't, I wouldn't claim to see it, but it came in. I mean, for one thing, I had good comparisons with pine warblers and with kinglets. So, I mean, that's one thing that very often, size is something that's very useful, but it's hard to get an objective measure. But if you got other birds that are clearly identifiable next to it. Like I can tell that was smaller than a pine warbler, so that's one indication. Bigger than a ruby crown kinglet, so it's the right size, really. And other things. The plumage I was in was not the hardest plumage to identify. And first year females are the hardest. They could be mistaken for yellow-rumped warbler, for example, would be a possible thing, a common bird that looks sort of like it. At any rate, so I had a pretty good view of it. So
You write the birds that you see in like an index spiral binded catalog.
that's right. I got. You want me to take it out?
Got it on you?
Oh,
Actually,
well, of course. Okay. You want me? Oh, there's our cat. I haven't seen it for a while, actually.
So you're talk about what you're doing. You're reaching.
Yeah, I'm getting my notebook out. It's mainly just a list. I usually keep a few notes. I keep it in plastic so it doesn't get wet. It's not only because of precipitation it might get wet, but so that's one thing. So so this is my last time I went out to Lake Fayetteville, and I have some notes because I saw this rare bird, so I made some notes on it. And I've got, not just here, I got it on a different page as well where I had a little more room. It continues over here. Didn't make too many notes. Very distinctive looking bird, easy to identify, and very confiding is the word I used. It came very close when I tried to attract it using, spishing. And I don't know. So that was the main highlight. But it's mainly just a list of the species and the number. So there were a lot of ducks. I estimated about 250 gadwall. So that was the bird with the biggest number. In some ways, that was the highlight, I guess. If you go by numbers. There was also a fair number of mallards and small numbers of most other things. And as far as birds go, I don't know, chipping sparrow is a bird. Used to be considered really rare here in the wintertime, but more and more common. Sort of like the orange-crowned warbler, although I think there were some records before the 80s. With the orange-crowned warbler, there were no winter records. There were records, but not winter records. Before 1980, a guy named Charlie Wooten found one on a Christmas count. And I think there were a few other records in the 80s, and now they're pretty much seen every winter. Just like I told you before, I saw one out here. So